Hello and welcome to another video. In this one we are going to be solving quadratic equations. In the last one we looked at factoring and that's what we're going to use a lot in these questions here today. So here are our steps. So number one, rearrange the quadratic equation into the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So just everything on one side and 0 on the other side. Then step 2, factor the equation into its factors. So that's why we needed to know factoring from the last day. And then step 3, solve each factor by making it equal to 0. So you're going to kind of split apart your two factors, set each equal to 0, and then solve. So for the first one, we got x squared minus 4x minus 21 equals 0. So three terms. There's nothing I can pull out from all the terms, so I can go right to my product and my sum. So the product was the first number, 1, times the last number. So that's going to give me negative 21. And then the sum is the middle number, negative 4. So we need to find two numbers that multiply to negative 21 and sum to negative 4. That would be negative 7 and 3. And because this is the easy type, where it's just a 1 in front, breaks apart. So we got x minus 7 and x plus 3. Don't forget your equals 0, it's still an equation. Then all we do, so that was our step 2 that we just did. Step 1 was already done, everything was already on one side. Step 3, we're going to solve each factor by making it equal to 0. So I'm going to take x minus 7, set that equal to 0, and x plus 3, set that equal to 0, and then solve these. So for the left one, I just have to add 7 onto both sides to get rid of that 7. And on the right one, I got a minus 3 from both sides. So the 7s are going to cancel on that one, and the 3s are going to cancel on that one. So I get x equals 7, and with this one, x equals minus 3. Moving to the next one, I can see with this one, not all the terms are on the same side, so I'm first going to move everything over to that left-hand side. So I'm going to have x squared. When the 10x comes over, it's going to change sign. It's going to be minus 10x. Negative 25 will come over, and it'll be positive 25. So we have that. Can't pull out anything from all the terms, so I can do my product and my sum here next. So our product, again, is that first number times the last number, so that's going to give me positive 25, and then the sum is the middle number, negative 10. Okay, so two numbers that multiply to 25, sum up to negative 10, it's going to be negative 5 and negative 5. So we got x minus 5 and x minus 5. Now both of these factors are the exact same, so once I get one of them, really I'm going to have both. So I'm just going to take the 1, x minus 5, set that equal to 0. I can add a 5 onto both sides, plus 5, plus 5, 5's cancel, and so I get x is equal to, just have a 5. So this one actually only has one solution. The previous one had two solutions. Moving on to the next one, number 3. So with this one, I can see there's only two terms, and there's a difference in the middle. So when we had that type, we figured it was going to be difference of squares, and in this case it is again. So I'm going to factor that. The square root of 4x squared is 2x, and then the square root of 25 is 5. So that's going to give me my two parts of my factors. So I'm going to have 2x and a 5. Do that in both brackets. And then in between is a plus and a minus, and the order that you do it doesn't matter. And then don't forget your equals 0. So now I'm going to take each one of these and set them equal to 0. So I'm going to have, and I'm just going to write it up top here, I'm going to have 2x plus 5 equals 0, and I'm going to have 2x minus 5 equals 0. So to solve those, let's look at the left one first. I'm going to minus 5 from both sides. 5's cancel. So I just get minus 5 on that one side. And then to get rid of the 2, divide by 2. So those 2's cancel. You got x equals negative 5 over 2. And similarly with the other one, add 5 onto both sides to get rid of that, so let's cancel. And you got 2x equals 5. Then divide both sides by 2 to get rid of the 2. So we got x equals 5 over 2. And all of these questions, I haven't mentioned this yet, but you can check all these questions by just taking your answer, substituting it back in, and see if you end up getting what it says. So in this case, we should get 0. Or you could check it by graphing. You could graph this, find out what your x-intercepts are, and get these two solutions. So in the last one, now this one's going to be a little bit of a harder one because the leading term here in front is not a 1, so it's going to be the harder type. So I can't factor anything out from all the terms. I already have 0 on the one side, so all my terms are on one side. So next I can do my product and my sum. So product is 3 times negative 8, so that's going to give me negative 24, and then sum is negative 2. So got to find the two numbers that do that for us, and that is going to be a negative 6 and a 4. Now I'm going to do this one a little bit differently for how to factor it. Last day we looked at factor by grouping, and we also looked at the fractional method for factoring as well. I'm going to do the cross product method for this one. So what you do is you take the two numbers that you had, and I'm going to write them here for a negative 6. You just kind of write them below this 8, but to the right of it. And then what you want to do is draw a cross arrow like this, one going up and one going down. And then below 3, you want to come up with some factors, and below 8, you want to come up with some factors. So below the 3, I got to come up with factors that multiply to give me 3. So I could put, say, like a 1 and a 3. But going across, like this, I'm going to have 3 times something has to give me 4. Okay, and I can't do that unless I use a fraction, and we don't want to do that. So I can't put the 3 actually in that spot. I need to reverse it and put the 3 there and the 1 there. Okay, so 1 times 4 would give me 4, and then going the other way, 3 times 2 would give me that 6 there. And then all we do is whatever sign you have here, that goes into the middle. So this sign comes into the middle. This sign here was positive 4, so we got positive right there. So our factors are going to be, this first one, it's going to be 3x plus 4. And then the second one is going to be 1x minus 2. So that's just a different way for how to factor it. You could also just use the factor by grouping or the fraction method. All of them will work. Okay, so now what's left, we just got to take this one, set it to equal 0, and this one, set it to equal 0. So let's do the left one here first. 3x plus 4 equals 0. Subtract 4 from both sides. Get those to cancel. So we got minus 4 here, and then divide both sides by 3. So we're going to get negative 4 over 3. Then for that second one, we had 1x minus 2, set that equal to 0. And then we're going to add 2 to both sides. 2's cancel. So I got x equals 2. Moving on from our first page. So in these ones now, we're going to have some word problem types. So in the first one, it says the area of a rectangular ping pong table is 45 feet squared. The length is 4 more than the width. So I'm just going to label this. Length is equal to the width plus 4 more. Okay, so I know my length and my width, they're written right there. And the question says, what are the dimensions of the table? So we want to find what the length is and what the width is. So with something like this, we know some things like area. Area is just equal to length times width, so I'm just going to write that out. Area is equal to length times width. And it told me the area is 45, so I can replace this 45 here into the area. So that's going to change to 45. The length, I also knew what length was. We had written that right over here. That's just w plus 4. So I'm going to change that to be w plus 4. Make sure you put brackets around that. And then we're timesing by w. Okay, and then what I have is an equation where there's just one unknown. There's just a w, so I can solve for w. So to do that, on the right side, I'm first going to distribute the w in. So I'm going to have w times w, that's w squared. And then w times 4, that's going to give me 4w. Okay, now I just have an equation like we did on the first page. We just got to get all of our terms onto one side. So I'm going to minus 45 to get that over onto the other side. So 45's cancel. I got 0 equals w squared plus 4w minus 45. Then I can do my product and my sum. So product is negative 45. Sum is positive 4. The two numbers that are going to do that are a 9 and a negative 5. So break it apart into our factors. And then we can take each of those and set them equal to 0. So w plus 9 equals 0, and w minus 5 equals 0. So this one's going to give me w equals minus 9, and this one's going to give me w equals 5. Now, of these two answers, we got to interpret and see what actually makes sense, because this is an applied question. So it said, what are the dimensions of the table? So if I just found w, and I know w stood for width, could I have that the w, the width, is equal to negative 9 feet? No, I could not. That doesn't make sense. So this one is extraneous. We're going to have to get rid of that one. But the other one, you could have that the width is equal to 5 feet. So that could make sense. So I'm just going to write over on the left here, the width is going to be 5 feet. And then to figure out what the length is, I can use what we had here in the beginning. It's equal to w plus 4. So it's w plus 4. And that was equal to, w was just 5, so it's going to be 5 plus 4. So the length is equal to 9 feet. So those are our two answers. The width has to be 5 feet, and the length has to be 9 feet. And then what you should do is just check to see if that actually works with the question. So to get the area, you just got to multiply 5 times 9. That gives you 45 feet squared. And I can see that the length is 4 more than the width. Now for our last example. So in this one it says roots can be turned into factors to determine the equation form from which they came. So if you were given in the first one x equals 4 and x equals negative 3, we can figure out what the equation was from that. So what you're going to do is you're going to start with this. It's kind of like two blank empty factors, where the r and the s are just the two answers that you had right there. So it's going to be x minus 4, and then x minus, and that was a minus 3, or a negative 3. So we got to put that in, like that. And then those two negatives, they're going to cancel, and that's going to give me a positive. So I'm going to have x minus 4 times x plus 3. Okay, and then from there, I can just FOIL this. So I got x times x, that's going to give me x squared. Got an x times a 3, it's 3x. Negative 4 times x, negative 4x. And then the last one, negative 4 times 3, that's negative 12. Okay, and then those two middle terms, I can put those two together. So I got x squared minus 1x. You wouldn't have to put the 1, but you can write it. Minus 12 equals 0. And that's our solution. Okay, looking at the second one, we're going to start similarly. So it's just going to be x minus r, x minus s equals 0. Don't forget, always put the equal 0. And then we're going to put those terms in. So x minus 5 over 2 is our first one. And the order that I put them in doesn't matter. I could have put in the negative 3 over 4 first. And then in that second one, the two negatives again, going to cancel, going to give me a positive. So I got x equals minus 5 over 2 times x plus 3 over 4. Okay, now if ever you have fractions like this, what's going to happen is that that denominator number is going to come up and go in front of the variable. So I'm going to have 2x minus 5 now, and the other one, the 4 comes up, so I got 4x plus 3. So we have that, and then I just got a FOIL. So 2x times 4x is 8x squared. 2x times 3 is 6x. Negative 5 times 4x is negative 20x. And negative 5 times 3 gives us negative 15. And then again, two middle terms, just put those back together. So 8x squared minus 14x minus 15 equals 0. And these ones again, you could check these two with your calculator. You could graph this, see if it gives you these as solutions, graph this, see if you get those as solutions. Okay, all that's left here is I'm just going to write our textbook questions down at the bottom. And I'm just going to make a note of these ones. For 7 to 10, you're just doing parts A, C, and E.